This is a kind of marathon session on inventing happiness. And of course, then it's important to know what is happiness all about? How could we have a happy life? How should we conceive of a happy life? Well, for centuries and centuries, philosophers have been talking and thinking about this issue. And I saw that some of the previous speakers already referred to some philosophers. That's also what I want to do now. I will explain to you how, in the history of Western philosophy, three conceptions, first of all, of love have been developed, and how, from these three conceptions of love, three conceptions of happiness, and also, in the end, it will become three dimensions of happiness, can be derived. And the first conception dates back from 2,500 years back. Platon, Socrates was the main personage in the dialogues of Platon, and Platon will explain that love is desire. Now you could say this is something very simple, love is desire, but in a certain sense there is some wisdom in this. Love starts from the knowledge that we are imperfect. I'm imperfect, and at the same time I'm aiming at, I'm longing for something that is much more perfect than I myself am, and I know this in my most intimate knowledge. Now, the main example Socrates and Platon give us is a philosopher. A philosopher is not someone who has wisdom in his pocket. A philosopher is someone who desires something he does not have, wisdom, a perfect insight, and in a certain sense, he's well aware that this insight is almost unattainable. And then love, and this will also become happiness. Happiness is this thrilling experience of aiming at something that is almost impossible to attain. Now you can say, well, this is a very abstract thing, but the first experience we all have of this is probably falling in love with someone. You fall in love with someone, we all had this experience, and then the person you love looks perfect, looks admirable, perfectly perfect, more than perfect. He or she is everything that I lack and that could make me perfectly happy. And of course, this is dangerous, because what we passionately love is not a real person, but is an image of perfection. And then the problem is, if you are confronted with the real other, with the real person you love, then very often, very rapidly, you will see that this is really rather disappointing. So sometimes I tell my students the best thing that can occur to you when you fall in love is that the beloved person goes away, goes on Erasmus stay to the other side of the globe or the other side of Europe, and then he or she is far away. You can send beautiful letters, you can write beautiful poetry. The most beautiful poetry has been written by mystics, and mystics, you know, the object of the love of mystics is God, is an impossible object, is far away, is perfect. But of course, again, you can't stay in love, you can't stay in passionate love with someone with whom you share the kitchen, the toilet, the bathroom, the living room, someone with whom you continuously live together. Well, there inevitably you will encounter the real other person with all its shortcomings, and that's not anymore the perfect image on which you fell in love. Now, let's go then from love to happiness. Happiness means that we long for something that is hardly unattainable. So you could say happiness has a utopian dimension. Happiness is very much connected with a hope of fulfillment. And then, of course, well, we long for this, we aim at this, we want to go, let's say, life is being underway to something that is hardly unattainable. Or we unhappy because we didn't attain already the goal that we aim at? Well, not necessarily. Even on the contrary, you could say this is a thrilling experience to go for something that is hardly attainable. So we could eventually compare it to a pilgrimage. The pilgrim goes to Compostela, but in fact, arriving in Compostela is much less interesting than going all the way along these mountains and so on. Going to the final aim is as much important as arriving at this final goal. So this first conception of love and happiness is very much forward-oriented, is oriented towards the future. In religious life, well, this is the hope for paradise, the paradise that we long for in the future, the heavenly paradise. Now, if the way to happiness makes us happy, is able to make us happy, is as thrilling as attaining happiness, then of course this leads us to a second conception of love and happiness. This has been expounded by Spinoza in the Ethics of Spinoza. And Spinoza, well, he wants to get rid of this future orientation of happiness and love. He says love is simply enjoying the presence of the beloved person. So taking your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife in your arms and thinking, well, let this last for a longer time. Well, this would be happiness according to Spinoza. And again, you could say, well, there is some wisdom in this. Epicurus, for instance, one of the first philosophers writing on this issue, Epicurus says, well, happiness means that you're able to enjoy a simple glass of water. No need for caviar and champagne, a simple glass of water. And then you could say, well, each and every day we see the sun going up, we see the sun going down in the evening. This is a marvelous spectacle. And many times we hardly see it. Well, having a happy life means that we are able to see wonder, that we are not going down in banality, that we are able to see wonder in life. The birth of a child, the beauty of a work of art, and a little baby is more beautiful than any work of art. Enjoying the sun going up, the sun going down, well, all this, we should be grateful for this, we should be able to see it and to enjoy it. And then in the history of philosophy, there has been a conflict between, let's say, two schools of philosophy. One of these schools, and you could say these are the two first conceptions I'm explaining to you here. One of these schools says, well, happiness is very much connected to hope for something that is better than our actual experience of imperfection. And you could say, well, the first conception means that there is no principled obstacle to go towards perfection, but nevertheless we experience our imperfection. And then you have the Spinozic stance, who says, and in contemporary philosophy, this is the famous French philosopher correspond, who will explain, well, in order to be happy, we should abandon hope. Abandoning hope is a precondition for being able to experience, to enjoy the present happiness we have and that is at hand and the wonder we face in our current life. So should we abandon hope or should we keep this utopian dimension? I tend to say, well, at first sight, maybe this seems to be two opposite definitions of happiness. Maybe this is not totally the case. You can enjoy the sun going up in the morning, going down in the evening, and at the same time long for a better world, long for a world with more justice, with less hungry people, with less people who are poor, and so on and so on. So I don't think there is exactly an opposition between these first two concepts of love. Third conception of love, and probably you can already guess, first conception was future-oriented, second conception was very much focused on the present, so the third conception will point back to the past. This is a conception that has been developed recently. I heard Alain Badiou, is a French philosopher, I heard him explain this 2 or 3 years ago in Avignon. And in the philosophy of Alain Badiou, the most important category is what he calls l'événement, an event. So the idea of Alain Badiou is our whole life is tainted by a kind of primary event. Now, what is this event? Well, you could say, when you fall in love, this is quite evident. When you fall in love, well, there is a whole story connected to that. This is an accidental meeting, and you see somebody, and well, in one way or another, the other person sees you, and well, you can tell a whole story, and of course, then you will have the problem of going back from the image of the other to the real other with his shortcomings. That was what I already explained to you. And then, according to Badiou, what is love? Love means that you remain truthful, that you may remain faithful to this original experience of meeting this other person, falling in love. So, remaining faithful to an original form of inspiration, you could say this is also the definition of happiness. Happiness, again, goes back to, in the first instance, you could say, goes back to an original event. You got caught by an image of what you want to become. I want to be a good philosopher, I want to become an excellent sportsman, I want to become an excellent artist, name whatever you want. You got caught by such an image. And let's say it's not just a matter of choice, but also a matter of being chosen in love, but also in our commitments. Our commitments dates back from an original experience, an original source of experience. And then what is a happy life? A happy life is a life in which we keep faithful to this original source of inspiration. Not to lose this original source of inspiration, not to get diverted into trying to gain as much money as possible. No, to keep up intrinsic motivation. These are happy persons who are able to keep up the original source of inspiration, who are able to keep up the connection with this original source. Again, you could say a happy life, and that is also Badiou, is a meaningful life. What is a meaningful life? It is a life that makes possible to make a kind of connection between our shallow, petty existence here and now and something that is more important than our life. Think about these first human beings sitting in front of their cavern. There was no television set at that moment, so they looked at the sky, they were looking at the stars, at heaven, and they were aware of the shallow existence. We are here on this earth, a particular moment, we are a small little spot in the universe. Well, what is meaningful life is a life in which we could connect to something that is greater than ourselves, the cosmos eventually, the universe, also connect to a value, to a person. Ask people, what are you living for? Some people will say, well, my children, that's the meaning of my life, or I'm living for philosophy, or I'm living for becoming for a kind of commitment, a value. I'm working for an NGO, I'm working for art. Well, each time there is an original commitment, that an original inspiration that then gives a kind of guiding principle in our lives. And a guiding principle in our lives that gives also meaning, that gives a direction in our lives. Well, this, according to Badiou, would be the third conception of happiness. And Badiou, by the way, the first experience of happiness for him and the first source of inspiration he found utterly important was May 68. For his whole life in his philosophy, he tried to keep a connection with this original experience. So, of course, happiness, then a happy life means that you try to go for a kind of commitment, and of course this commitment can be deceptive. Also, the person you love, well, you can go through deceptions, and probably a happy life is not a life without obstacles or without limitations. A happy life is a life where you keep up this connection with the person you love, notwithstanding all obstacles and all limitations you can meet. Well, in the end, I explained you 3 conceptions of love and happiness, and these 3 conceptions are not alternative, or not just alternative conceptions. You could say also it are 3 different dimensions of happiness. At one hand, you could say, well, we have to stay faithful to the original source of inspiration that put us into movement. Again, we should be able to see wonder around us, be amazed, and also, I think we have to keep open this utopian dimension in life. We should dare to hope for a better world than the world in which we actually live. Thank you for your attention.